As you progress through learning these skills in Photoshop, you'll probably notice that you tend to accumulate more and more layers, especially as you realize the more things you leave on their own layer, the easier it is to go back and manipulate them. So if I look at my layers box over here, I can see I have a whole bunch of different layers, and if I click through with the eyeball, I can kind of tell which ones are where, but there's a really neat trick for organizing these that Photoshop has built in, and it is the group folder. To put things into a group folder, first off you need to make the folder. So at the bottom of your layers panel there is a little box or button that looks like a folder, and if you click on it, it will create a group folder. Now this group folder is empty, but I can move layers into it. So find the layers that you want to move into it, and then you can click on one, hold Command to click on others if you want to grab multiple, and then click and drag them up to that folder, and now those are in the group folder. One of the reasons we like putting things in groups is not only does it let us hide and reveal all these objects at once, but you can also grab your Move tool and move the whole folder when you are actually on it. So let me show you just a couple variations on what we just did, and you can practice them and pick your favorite to become your standard mode of operation when using groups and lots of layers. First off, that really cool trick I believe I've used in some of my tutorials before of selecting the layer just by clicking on the object out here becomes really useful for gathering up layers to put into groups. You need your Move tool, and then up in the control bar make sure that the little drop down says Layer. Hold down the Command key and click on the layer that you want to go to. So here I've clicked on 2, and you can see it came over there in 2. But I also want to have these two blue dot layers as well. I can add those by holding down Command and Shift and clicking on them as well. And there we go. Now you'll notice I didn't create a group folder already. That's because if you have layers already gathered up here, you can click and drag them down to that group folder, and it will put them in the folder for you. But of course I'm not going to just stick with that way. I've got another thing too. To grab all sorts of layers that are in a particular area, if you have again your Move tool with the drop down set to Layer, hold down Command and click somewhere outside of the group where there's no layers, and then click and drag, and it'll look like you're making a selection with your Marquee tool, and you'll notice in your layers box all of those things that you dragged over are now layers that you have selected. Now that we have those, just grab them and drag them down to the folder, and you guessed it, I still have some layers left, so I'm going to show you one more thing. Let's use that same option of holding down Command and click and dragging to get all of these layers. The shortcut for creating a group from selected layers is Command G, and now we have 4 groups. You can move these individually of each other. You can also treat them much like a layer by adding a layer style. You can double click on the empty part of the group layer and your layer style options come up. If you click on the word bevel and emboss, you can see that you get the editing options for that. So this will treat this much like a layer. Now this is a fairly new feature, I believe, so I can't promise that you can add layer styles to these groups if you're in any version that's older than CS6. The other thing is you can put a layer mask on a group. So I can be on a group and click the Add Layer Mask, and it will add it just like it would on any other thing. So just to show you, I'm going to grab my rectangular marquee tool and make a selection and fill it with black while I'm on my layer mask, and now it's masked out that area of all of those layers within it, but I can still click open the folder and come in and move these individual layers. probably the last thing you need to know about groups of folders is that if you're using that cool direct selection option, is that little drop down that says layer, you'll notice the other option was group. So grab your move tool, change this to group, and then hold command and click on one of the numbers. Instead of getting that layer, you get the whole group. This is something you probably should just remember, that if you're command clicking to get things and it's grabbing a whole bunch of objects instead of just one, you might be having it set on group and it's going to just the group. Okay, I think that's about it. Final roundup. The last thing I'm going to tell you is you can also put a whole bunch of these groups as one group. So I'm going to hold shift and select the bottom, drag these down to my group folder and put them there. And you can see it organizes very much how you would see files organized in your window navigator. Okay, groups. There it is.